Hello everyone and welcome to the first ever episode of Do I Have Time for This? The series that looks at old and new video games, both indie and AAA, to help you figure out whether or not you actually have the time to play it, finish it, 100% complete it, or just leave it in your backlog forever to gather dust. We're all busy in life. Jobs, kids, classes, exercising, you name it. So let's take a little time right now to look at Resident Evil 4 Remake and figure out, do I have time for this? Just a side note here, all of the gameplay I'm showing is from the first village area of the game, and does not include castle or island sections, as half of the enjoyment of the game comes from not knowing what's around the corner or not knowing what they changed from the original for returning fans of Resident Evil 4. Today we're going to take a look into Resident Evil 4 Remake, a game very close to my heart as I sunk a lot of time into the original back in 2005. For those who didn't play the original, don't worry. This isn't a story-focused game where you'll have to spend hours reading extra wiki pages and item descriptions just to give up and go to another YouTuber's channel to watch an hour-long story synopsis. Gameplay is king here, despite them fleshing out a few characters from the original. In Resident Evil 4, you are Leon Kennedy, returning character from Resident Evil 2, who has been tasked by the President to track down Ashley Graham, the President's daughter. Yes, this is one of those old-school action movie plots from back in the 80s and 90s. Much like the original game, there's not much else to the story. There's bosses like Osmond Sadler, the enigmatic leader of the Los Illuminados cult, to meet and take down, but widely the goal remains the same. There is a bit more backstory to Leon, exploring survivors' guilt from the previous outbreak in Raccoon City during the events of Resident Evil 2, alongside developing some other side characters who had minimal screen time in the original, with a few more almost co-op type segments reminiscent of Resident Evil 5, but the game moves at such a tight pace that it never really stops to let any of these themes or characters truly develop. Believe me, if you're looking for a concise, easy to follow story with great action and a spooky atmosphere, this is the game for you. As I said before, gameplay is king here, and whilst a lot of story sections and set pieces were overhauled and reworked to fit the modern era, the gameplay definitely evolved from the 2005 version to something very modern. Gameplay in Resi 4 Remake honestly feels like the culmination of everything Capcom have been working towards in terms of their gameplay systems for Resident Evil. Core shooting feels weighty here, with each weapon feeling unique when shooting it. Even if some of the unique upgrade perks are missing and replaced with a generic 2x damage upgrade from the merchant, the aiming does have a slight bit of the Naughty Dog aiming system, where your shot will hit somewhere within your aiming reticule, but it's nowhere near as noticeable as in The Last of Us or the Uncharted series of games. It genuinely feels like they've refined what a gun feels like from Resident Evil 2, where sometimes shots to a zombie would lack impact and it wouldn't do as much damage as you'd expect. But here, each Ganado in Resident Evil 4 reacts to the bullets as you sink into them, allowing you to perform the melee attacks made so popular in the original game. And yes, the suplex is back, and you can do it from the beginning. Also worth noting, the reload animations are just chef's kiss. Okay, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Yes, Resident Evil 4 is at its heart an escort mission. Whilst these types of levels in games are definitely not the greatest, RE4 Remake makes this much more tolerable. Instead of the wait and follow commands from the original game, where she would just be left standing around or hiding in a bin, you have the option of tight or loose. Tight command is for when you're running through enemies, and loose command is when enemies are attacking, and you don't want Ashley to get caught in the crossfire, you need her to take a step back. Honestly, being a veteran of the original game, I barely noticed that she was there, but it could be different for newcomers. Also worth noting that you can unlock a costume that makes Ashley impervious to damage, something I definitely recommend unlocking if you're going to go for full completion of the game. The treasure and side quest aspects made popular in Resident Evil Village have also been a bit fleshed out here, providing actual reasons for backtracking to previously visited areas. Although the quests themselves are very basic and often just involve collect X amount of this or kill a strong version of X enemy, the rewards are definitely worth completing the quest for, and honestly, any more time playing this extremely satisfying gameplay was fine by me. Treasure is now a custom system which allows you to get gems of varying rarity and slot them into different pieces of treasure to boost their value, giving you a choice as to whether you'll save your best gems for another piece of more expensive loot, or slot them into something cheaper so you can sell them right now and get that upgrade you need for a tough section ahead. The attaché case inventory system has also been slightly upgraded here. You still have the Tetris-like item management, but you also get an auto-sort button, saving you a lot of time sitting in the menu and organising all of your items. You also get the option to customize the background of the case, as well as 3 keyring slots, which are not only cosmetic upgrades, but grant buffs to Leon throughout the playthrough, most of which are pretty useful and worth sinking some time to acquire. The biggest gameplay innovation Capcom added to the remake is the knife parry mechanic by far. Instead of having an unbreakable knife that you have to stand still and swing on downed enemies, you start the game with the same combat knife Leon was given in Resident Evil 2 Remake. Only this time it has a durability mechanic.
I am shocked and appalled.
This might sound bad, but it really does add to the survival aspect of this horror game, where you have to weigh up whether you want to knife a downed enemy to save ammo, or save your knife, as if it breaks, you'll have a lot less defensive options than before. One of these defensive options is the parry mechanic I mentioned earlier. Hitting the parry button at just the right time will negate all damage from that attack and give you a window to melee the enemy for a huge advantage. You can find other disposable knives throughout the game, and the merchant can repair your knife, so trust me on this one. It is not as frustrating as it might sound, but I definitely sink some cash in upgrading this thing early doors. I'm happy to report adaptive difficulty makes a return in Resident Evil 4 Remake, something that's rarely talked about when it comes to Resident Evil 4 2005, but revolutionary in game design. The way it works is if you have plenty of heals and ammo, the AI will become overly aggressive and push you constantly from all sides. But once you take a few hits and start running out of ammo, they'll ease off, become a bit more passive, such that you'll never really breeze through encounters, but it always feels like you've just scraped past every time. What also sees a return is the shooting gallery, retooled and featuring one of the best classic music tracks from the original game. Here, rewards of the gallery will provide you with tokens, which you use on an old gumball type machine, providing you with little keychains featuring original character designs from Resident Evil 4 2005, and they give you some small stat boosts when hooked onto your attaché case, as I said earlier. The only issue with this gumball machine is the rewards are random depending on the combination of silver and gold tokens, so whilst this side activity doesn't take too much of your time, it can feel a little unrewarding if you keep getting the same rewards over and over. Say what you want about the necessity of these modern Resident Evil remakes, I don't think anyone can deny that Capcom creates what I'd say is their most graphically sound games to date with these remakes, and Resident Evil 4 Remake doesn't disappoint in this department. The Reach for the Moon or RE engine they use is really pushed to the limit here. You can really see each gross tentacle and blood splatter as you blow apart Ganados with grenades and high-powered weapons, and whilst you can see some recycled assets from the previous games in the remake series, Capcom have definitely put a lot of effort into making the environments of Resident Evil 4 Remake feel real and lived in, especially compared to the near empty houses of the original. And yes, I know it was running on GameCube, but the comparison was always going to get made. The character and weapon models are also top-notch, showing a huge level of detail, although there is something about Leon's eyes specifically that just look really weird at times. Or is that just me? Is it just me? The enemy and boss redesigns, without spoiling anything, are top-notch here, and match up perfectly with the freedom of movement Leon has when he's fighting his enemies, as opposed to having to stand completely still when shooting in the original. Some people have said that dog enemies look a bit goofy, but honestly, they aren't that bad, and the parasite versions you fight can honestly be no joke. Even though this game looks phenomenal, it actually has a fairly low spec requirement on PC, with a recommended AMD Ryzen 5 3600 or Intel Core i7 8700 CPU, and an AMD Radeon RX 5700 or Nvidia GeForce GTX 1070 GPU. Finally, a decent port in the 2020s. Really? Shocking. So let's get down to it. How long does this game take? If you're looking to do just the main story, no backtracking and minimal side quests, you'll be looking at around 15 hours. If you include all the extra optional content, you can easily push this to 20 hours with full completion including achievements, being around 50 hours, depending on how well you optimize your runs and if you follow guides. So on my first playthrough, I played this on hardcore difficulty and did everything available, and I clocked in about 22 hours, and that was moving pretty slowly and getting stuck on certain set pieces. I went for full completion on this game without following guides and honestly just having fun on stream, and ended up with a total of 85 hours, and this is before they added the optional arcade mercenaries mode. As I said before, this game moves at a swift pace, and apart from the hardest difficulty unlocked after finishing the game for the first time, there's an autosave alongside copious amounts of save points, so the game actually works fairly well for picking up, playing a set piece, and then just putting it back down. Although I'd recommend a good 2 hours per session at least, where possible, as you're constantly being pushed forward in the way the chapters are segmented, some do feel shorter than others. That being said, I do feel like the speedrun type unlocks and hardest difficulty achievements getting the highest rank can be very taxing in terms of time commitment, as for the higher ranks you need to save less and have the autosave turned off, so you would need to commit at least an hour or so at a time, I would say. Ultimately, Resident Evil 4 Remake is the culmination of everything gameplay-wise Capcom has been working towards since Resident Evil 7 back in 2017. The technical performance, coupled with the smooth gameplay and a much more refined experience from the original, makes Resident Evil 4 Remake instantly recommendable and definitely worth your time. Although I would say for those of you with a lot of commitments, I would stay away from unlocking everything and stick to the core experience of the story, as whilst the game does respect the casual player's time, it does demand a fair bit from the completionists. If you are a completionist, I think this game's definitely worth the full price, but if you just do the mainline story and maybe one casual playthrough and a few games of the new DLC mode, this may be where you wait for a slight decrease in the price. They've also recently added a Mercenaries mode which allows you to play as other characters as well as Leon in an arcade shooter mode, with each character possessing different powers and loadouts, expanding on the original version by quite a bit, I'd say. This can add some more casual pickup and playtime for those of you who don't have a great deal of spare time, and with some free DLC for everyone on all the platforms, even if it did come alongside some fairly pointless microtransactions, which I recommend you ignore. If after listening to this video you're still not sure if it's for you, check out the Chainsaw demo Capcom released for free before the game released, for a 20-minute gameplay demo. Honestly, if you're not sold after that, I'm not convinced you ever will be. So, do you think you have time for Resident Evil 4 Remake? On this channel I like to give my thoughts on the game, alongside a bit more of a deep dive on the time you have to invest, so you know what you're getting into before you load it up, because time is precious, right? If you enjoyed the video or found it useful, feel free to like and share. If you subscribe, I'm looking to put out regular content like this, alongside some more in-depth video essays, so stick around. If you have any requests on future videos, just drop them in the comments. And finally, if you want to come and hang out, chat with me, you can find me over on twitch.tv/GraciousRhino every Sunday. I'm Gracious Rhino, look after each other, and I'll catch you soon.